A spokesperson of the Foreign and Expatriates Ministry says the Turkish military plane violated the Syrian sovereignty in an obvious way in accordance with initial Turkish facts, information and declarations. Maqdisi says the Syrian response was defensive and a sovereign act using a land-based anti-aircraft machine gun that has a maximum range of 2.5 kilometers. And competent authorities arrest a number of terrorists in Latakia and Idleb, killing many others and seizing their weapons. And a special report about the famous Syria market that carries in its alleys the aroma of age in old Damascus. Hello and welcome. This is the latest updates from the Syrian television in Damascus. The Foreign and Expatriates Ministry spokesperson Jihad Maqdisi stressed that the Turkish military plane violated the Syrian sovereignty in an obvious way. Maqdisi pointed out that in a press conference he held today that the Turkish foreign minister gave a different story concerning downing the Turkish military plane. In accordance with the initial Turkish facts, information and statements, the Syrian response was a defensive sovereign act using a land-based anti-aircraft machine gun that has a maximum range of 2.5 kilometers. Maqdisi added that Syria has asked the Turkish side to form a Turkish military committee to come and inspect the scene, but we did not receive any answer so far. Maqdisi stressed that Syria is committed to good neighborly relations with Turkey, and Syria is not the one who harmed the bilateral relations, adding that Syria is applying the principle of reciprocity and holds no hostility towards the Turkish people. He said that the aim of the Turkish government statement is to mobilize the Turkish people behind its behavior against Syria, which does not serve Turkey itself, adding that the NATO meeting should work for preserving security and stability, and in case it were aggressive in nature, we say that the Syrian territories, water and air are sacrosanct for the Syrian army. In a reply to a question about the search operations to find the pilots and about the EU role in the Syrian crisis, Mr. Maqdisi said,
"What about the pilots? Is still ongoing the research? And also you sent an appeal, especially to Italy in the last days, but they react like the European Union in these days. What is your opinion now?"
Look, regarding the EU role in the Syrian crisis, it's definitely a negative role. If the EU wants really to help Syria, we want them to reach out to Syria, to diagnose really what's going on in Syria. It's not like what they are listening in the mass media. They have to diagnose better so they can have a better medicine for Syria. So to sum up, it's still a negative role. Regarding the pilots, the search and rescue operation are still undergoing, and the cooperation and coordination is also undergoing between the Turkish and the Syrian side. Unfortunately, we haven't found the pilots, but we did found the wreckage of the jet fighter.
On the 38th annual occasion of the liberation of Al-Qunaytira and raising the Syrian flag over it, our kith and kin in the occupied Syrian Golan held a seminar in the Archaeological Museum in Majd al-Shams. The speakers asserted that Syria would come out victorious of the current crisis. The Popular Committee for the Liberation of the Golan asserted that the liberation of the city was an important landmark in the history of our struggle against the Zionist enemy. The Parties Affairs Committee continued to study the documents presented by the Promise and Democratic Union parties. During its meeting yesterday, the committee also reviewed the applications presented by some newly authorized parties and decided to call for a meeting to discuss issues related to parties' laws and the duties of these parties in light of the new law. Despite terrorism and the crimes committed by the armed terrorist groups, stories of heroism and by members of the competent authorities are abundant. Soldier Somar Mahmoud, while defending and fending off an attack by an armed terrorist group in the area of Khabab in the city of Deir, was shot and wounded in his legs by explosive bullets that has shattered the arteries and veins, but despite the injury he did not hesitate to defend his country right to the end.
In the area of Khabab in Dar'a, terrorist gangs opened fire on innocent citizens without discrimination in order to create panic. 5 terrorists in a car attacked me with my colleagues near the church. I opened fire in self-defense and killed the driver of the car and another terrorist in the back seat. One of the terrorists opened fire at me and hit my left foot. I fell on the ground. He shot me again. The bullet which hit me exploded, cutting the blood vessels and shattered the bones. The accent of one of the terrorists in the car was not Syrian.
4 terrorists have been killed in a booby-trapped car they were planning to detonate near the law enforcement forces in Kafrumbul town in Idleb countryside. A source in the governorate told Sana correspondent that the booby-trapped car exploded before 500 meters of its arrival to the law enforcement forces, which resulted in the killing of 3 terrorists on board and another one who was riding a motorcycle next to the car. 2 law enforcement members were killed, while 3 others were injured in a clash with an armed terrorist group which attacked law enforcement forces near Nahlaya crossroads on Al-Mastume area in Ariha in the countryside of Idlib. A source in the city said that the clashes resulted in the death of 9 terrorists and the arresting of 2 others. And in the same context, the military engineering units detonated 9 explosive devices planted by armed terrorist groups on Kafrawiyid, Kansafra Road. The weight of the explosive devices ranged between 50 to 57 kilograms and they were equipped with remote control. The military engineering units detonated 3 other explosive devices on Kansafra Balian Road, which weighed between 30 to 40 kilograms without causing any damage. And in Latakia, security forces arrested terrorists Ahmed Nabil Shami and Azzuddin Haj Ahmed Yusuf while they were planting explosive devices to target civilians and law enforcement forces. A source in the city said that the 2 terrorists detonated explosive devices at Al-Iskan Street in Latakia, causing the death of citizen Muhammad Ahmed Hawari and the child, Ayman Trefi.
I'm a member of the coordinating committee called the Latakia Youth. This committee is led by the terrorist called Adam. It consists of several sections: the security, information, military, and civilian. Its acts include throwing bombs, halting the demonstrations, and sending false news reports to Al Jazeera television channel. We carried out acts of sabotage against the government property, and we killed the children of the doctor, Man Al-Atiyeh. We were told to spread the rumor that the security forces burned his house. I was arrested by the security forces and tried in a court of law, which released me on probation. Adam called me on the 23rd of last month, and he asked me to carry out an operation in the evening of Al-Saliba, using pistols, bombs, and dynamites. Adam told me that he would give me an explosive device to be detonated by remote control. The terrorist called Abu Bakr planted the device, and I detonated it and escaped quickly. Later, I learned that the explosion killed 2 children and wounded many citizens.
Security forces clashed with an armed terrorist group that was attacking citizens in Al Jbele neighborhood in Deir. A source in the city said that the clash resulted in the killing of dozens of terrorists. The source added that all members of the terrorist groups, led by terrorists Muhammad al-Naif, Nizam Rabi'i, Ali al-Dghaim, and Muhammad al-Abras, were killed in the clash. Security forces seized the terrorist weapons, which included RPG launchers, machine guns, and sniper rifles. The source added that the terrorist blew himself up in a car for transporting food in the city, causing his own death. In Homs, terrorist groups committed sabotage acts against public and private properties in Jurat al-Shayyah neighborhood. They destroyed a number of government institutions and plundered shops and houses in the area. The newly elected Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi called for the restoration of normal relations between Egypt and Iran in order to achieve a new balance in the region. Morsi's statement came in an interview with Faris news agency, where he said relations should be restored on the basis of common interests, political coordination and economic cooperation. This would create strategic balance in the region. Mr. Morsi also said that he supported the revision of the peace agreement with Egypt signed with Israel in order to achieve the interests of both Egypt and Palestine first. A Turkish soldier was killed and 3 others were wounded last night in clashes between Turkish security forces and members of the Kurdistani Labour Party in southeastern Turkey. The clashes took place between the areas of Hakkari and Çırnak while the Turkish security forces were carrying out operations. One of the most famous destinations in old Damascus, a must-see for visitors and a current destination for residents of the city. A trip to Ezzor market in the following report.
Damascus, the oldest continuously inhabited city in the world, is famous for its markets or souks covered with tin ceilings that protect shoppers from the scorching summer sun or from the cold winter winds.
All visitors, Arab and foreigners, come to the souk to visit it, to know about its history and its ancient architecture.
The Bzuriya souk is old. All kinds of spices are sold here. Some people come here from everywhere.
The Bzuriya market is one of those souks. It caters for the gourmets and all those who love their food.
Its owners didn't leave it. They inherited it. Some shops are about 1600 to 1700 years old.
Most tourists visit this renowned souk as soon as they arrive in Damascus. They either visit Al-Hamidiyeh, the Madhat Basha souk, or this souk.
The little age-old shops lining the streets of the market stock all kinds of foodstuff, sweetmeats and culinary spices, and especially those used to flavor the famous dishes prized by the Damascenes.
And with this taste of Damascus, we conclude our news bulletin for today. Stay with us after the break. Vani and the latest in economy. Also, if you need more news about Syria and the region, you can visit our website in English, www.syriaonline.sy.